fact that he threatens to carry out crimes against humanity, and the Western media is not shocked, or no one is outraged by this. It just shows that the entire political class of the United States and the collective West is just utterly corrupt and will destroy the critical infrastructure that is literally controlled by the West. And of course, its proxies in the Persian Gulf are partners in the war against Iran. So it will destroy that critical infrastructure, and that will lead to a global economic depression. It will fail. Of course, when they launch their ground invasion, which will probably come soon, you will see the collective Western media, even West opponents of Trump, talk about the great successes and how they're making progress and how these are empty threats. First of all, where were these American assets? Where was the AWACS plane destroyed? It was in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a part of this war. They're a part of the aggression. They cannot pretend they're neutral. Now he's looking, by all accounts, for an off-ramp, but the Israeli regime and the Zionists won't give it to him. So obviously he's not the boss. So why should we negotiate with someone who's not in charge of the United States?
So Trump is out here threatening to literally bomb Iran's oil infrastructure and power plants and calling it diplomacy. Meanwhile, the Western media just yawns. Like this is normal. Like threatening crimes against humanity is just another Tuesday. And here's the thing. Iran's calling his bluff hard. They're saying if the US touches their infrastructure, the entire Persian Gulf goes up in flames. We're talking about a global economic collapse that makes 2008 look like a minor inconvenience. And Trump? He's claiming there are great talks happening with a new, more reasonable regime, which, spoiler alert, is complete nonsense. There are no talks. Iran's not negotiating. And what happens next could genuinely reshape the global economy for a generation. Professor Marandi breaks down exactly why Trump's threats are empty, why the Gulf states are about to pay the price for picking the wrong side, and why this entire war is a gift to the Israeli regime that the American people are going to end up hating them for. This gets wild. Let's dive in.
Now, President Trump has repeated his threats this morning to destroy Iran's oil infrastructure as well as its power generation plants. Again, he said there are talks taking place. He said these talks are making great progress. They're going very well. He added this morning that the U.S. is now talking to what he called a, quote, new and more reasonable regime. Those are his words. Do you know anything about these talks? Can we attach any credibility to what the U.S. president is saying, or is this just about the markets and where they're going?
The fact that he threatens to carry out crimes against humanity, and the Western media is not shocked, or no one is outraged by this. It just shows that the entire political class of the United States and the collective West is just utterly corrupt. And this is the Epstein class and their lack of values that have led to this situation. The media doesn't pick up on this. No, there are no negotiations taking place, and the Iranians have been very clear that the facts on the ground have to change, and if the United States starts targeting Iran's critical infrastructure, no doubt, without any doubt, Iran will destroy the critical infrastructure that is literally controlled by the West, and of course its proxies in the Persian Gulf are partners in the war against Iran. So it will destroy that critical infrastructure, and that will lead to a global economic depression far greater than 1929.
Now, there are already more forces, United States forces in the region. We've seen these thousands of troops moving into the area, and this all comes amid threats of a land invasion. In fact, the United States says that its goals now, and its goals keep changing, but its goals now is to seize Iran's uranium stockpile, as well as seize Kharg Island, which is the oil terminal, the oil port that Iran uses to export its oil. With these troops in the region right now, how do you see this playing out?
It will fail. Of course, when they launch their ground invasion, which will probably come soon, you will see the collective Western media, even West opponents of Trump, talk about the great successes and how they're making progress and how they're taking this land and that land and how the And for a couple of days, a lot of people will believe it. And then just like at the beginning of this war of aggression, we saw the same narrative. But then after a few days, it became clear that that wasn't the case and they're not winning. Ultimately, the United States will lose. They will not succeed. And any escalation will bring about escalation from the Iranian side. An escalation on the Iranian side and the axis of resistance, meaning Iraq and Yemen and, of course, Hezbollah, that escalation will cause that escalation that would be initiated by the Trump and Netanyahu regimes would have permanent damage to the global economy. It will only make things worse. So the more they push and they move down this road of escalation, the more long-term damage is caused to the oil and gas installations and the petrochemical plants and the tankers in a way in which they are irreversible for years. And so it will only make the economic collapse more long-term and more deep for the entire world. And the world will blame the United States and the Israeli regime, and the American people will blame the Israeli regime because they will all know that this war is not in the interest of the United States, and it was imposed on the United States by the Israeli regime. And that, I think, is something that Zionists are not thinking about carefully, but ultimately they will pay the price.
Now, there is a possibility that this conflict could expand in the region itself. Iran has already hit targets in Kuwait. It's hit targets in Saudi Arabia as well. We've seen these reports of Iran targeting a United States surveillance plane, the AWACS plane. They were destroyed. Targets in Kuwait, as I said, have been hit as well.
Okay, so can we talk about what Marandi just laid out here? Because this is the part that nobody in the Western media wants to touch. Iran already proved they're not bluffing. When Israel hit their gas field, Iran didn't just hit back. They hit Israeli and Gulf state infrastructure. Hard. And Trump went on Truth Social like, I had no idea this was happening, which is the most transparent lie I've ever seen. Like, dude, your entire military command structure knew. You might have been golfing, but someone in the Pentagon absolutely knew. And Marandi just called it out. Trump said Israel won't do it again, but Israel literally keeps doing it. They violate the Lebanon ceasefire daily. They're still bombing Gaza, even with a supposed ceasefire in place. So why would Iran believe a single word Trump says? And here's the thing that's so obvious. Trump's not even the one calling the shots. Netanyahu is. The Israeli regime wants this war, and they've basically dragged the US into it. And Trump, for all his bluster about being tough, is looking for an off-ramp because he knows this is a disaster. But he can't take it because the Zionist lobby won't let him. So Iran's sitting there like, why would we negotiate with someone who's not in charge? That's a genuinely good question. You had the nuclear deal in 2015. Trump tore it up. They were negotiating 9 months ago. Trump was secretly conspiring against them. Every single time the US has a chance to de-escalate, they choose aggression. And Marandi's point about the 2015 nuclear deal is devastating. You can't trust a piece of paper from a country that rips it up the second a new guy gets elected. And now we're seeing the economic fallout in real time. The Strait of Hormuz isn't fully closed, but it's restricted enough that countries around the world are adopting emergency energy measures. Businesses are closing early because they literally don't have the power to stay open. This is already happening. And if Trump actually goes through with bombing Iran's infrastructure, Marandi just told you what happens. Iran hits the Gulf states' oil infrastructure, the global economy collapses, and the world blames the United States and Israel, not Iran, the US. And guess who American voters are going to blame when gas is $10 a gallon and the economy is in free fall? They're going to blame Israel. They're going to say, wait, we destroyed our economy for this? For Netanyahu? And Marandi's right. The Zionists aren't thinking about that. They think they can keep escalating forever and the US will just keep backing them. But there's a breaking point, and we might be watching it happen in real time. Let me know in the comments, do you think Trump actually wants a way out of this, or is he just fully owned by the Israel lobby at this point?
They threatened to retaliate directly against Iran. What happens if they carry out their threat?
Nothing. These are empty threats. First of all, where were these American assets? Where was the AWACS plane destroyed? It was in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a part of this war. They're a part of the aggression. They cannot pretend they're neutral. They're agents of empire. And the same is true with Kuwait and Qatar and the Emirates. They're all agents of empire. And if they strike Iran, then Iran will hit back harder. Iran has already said that any strike on us will be hit. Iran will respond massively with mass power. And Iran has already shown that. When the Israeli regime struck Iran's South Pars gas field, the Iranians had already said beforehand that we'll hit back harder. And Iran did so. It struck Israeli, Qatari, Saudi, and Emirati assets with great devastation. And that's what caused Trump to write on Truth Social that I had no knowledge about it, which is a lie. I mean, all these attacks are coordinated between the two countries. He may not be involved because he's busy playing golf, but his people would definitely know. And then he said Israel won't do it again, which we don't believe because we don't believe him. And he's not the boss anyway. And that is another reason why talking with the United States is not useful. The United States is treacherous. We had the nuclear deal of 2015. Trump tore it up. We were negotiating 9 months ago. He was secretly conspiring against us. Again, this time around, he did the same thing. And right now, he's looking, by all accounts, for an off-ramp, but the Israeli regime and the Zionists won't give it to him. So obviously, he's not the boss. So why should we negotiate with someone who's not in charge of the United States?
We are seeing the impact of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz around the world. We've seen so many countries around the world now adopt emergency measures to reduce demand on energy. We're seeing some countries actually close their businesses earlier because they don't have the energy to keep those businesses open. What will it take from Iran's part for that strait to be reopened?
Well, the strait is not completely closed. Iran is helping countries that are particularly vulnerable. But first of all, Iran has to make sure that the facts on the ground change. So these Arab family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf, which have no popular legitimacy, they cannot be allowed to be a platform to murder Iranians in future. And they will have to pay reparations. So they have to behave like normal countries. And also Iran's allies across the region, which are being targeted by the Zionist regime and the Americans, they have to be feel safe and secure. The Zionist regime had a ceasefire with Lebanon. They were violating it every day and murdering people every day. In the case of Gaza, they've been violating the ceasefire even, to greater, with greater deadly results. That's not acceptable. So the facts on the ground have to change. The Iranians have to feel assured that in future their sovereignty will be respected. And a few words by Trump or a piece of paper with his signature means nothing to us after what has happened. And these countries in the Persian Gulf region, they have no reason to complain. They brought this upon themselves. They thought that they could have their cake and eat it too. They thought that they could be agents of empire and see the empire destroy other countries through them, and they can just walk and sit in their palaces and in their restaurants and enjoy themselves. That's not going to happen.
All right, so let's just be clear about what we just watched. Professor Marandi absolutely dismantled the entire Western narrative on this Iran situation. Trump's out here talking about great progress in talks that don't exist. He's threatening to bomb critical infrastructure, which is a literal war crime, by the way. And the media is just covering it like it's a normal policy proposal. No outrage, no moral panic, just Trump says he might destroy Iran's power grid. Markets react. It's insane. And Marandi laid out the playbook. If the US escalates, Iran escalates harder. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, they're all complicit. They've been letting the US use their territory to launch attacks on Iran, and now they're pretending to be neutral. But Iran's not buying it. They've already hit assets in those countries, and Marandi made it crystal clear. If those regimes retaliate, Iran will hit back even harder. And here's the thing. Iran has the capability. They've proven it. The West keeps acting like Iran is bluffing, and then Iran does exactly what they said they would do, and the West acts shocked. And the economic devastation that's coming if this keeps escalating, it's not hypothetical. It's already starting. The Strait of Hormuz is restricted. Energy prices are spiking. Countries are rationing power. And if this turns into a full regional war with Iran targeting Gulf oil infrastructure, Marandi said it, we're looking at a global depression worse than 1929. And the entire world will know exactly who caused it. Not Iran, the United States and Israel. And here's the part that really stood out to me. Marandi's point about why Iran won't negotiate. Why would they? The US negotiated the nuclear deal, then tore it up. They were negotiating 9 months ago while secretly planning an attack. Trump keeps saying one thing and doing another. He's not even in control. Netanyahu is. So what's the point? You can't make a deal with someone who's either lying or powerless. And that is a devastating indictment of US foreign policy right now. The Gulf states brought this on themselves. They thought they could be proxies for the empire, help the US and Israel destroy countries, and then just sit in their palaces sipping champagne while the rest of the region burns. Marandi's message to them was basically, that's over. You're going to pay reparations. You're going to stop being a platform for aggression, or you're going to lose everything. And honestly, that's fair. These are dictatorships with no popular legitimacy. Their own people don't even support them. They've been propped up by the West for decades, and now the bill is coming due. Look, I don't think Trump understands the scale of what he's stepping into. I think Netanyahu's been feeding him this fantasy that they can just bomb Iran into submission, regime change happens, and everything's fine. But that's not how this works. Iran's not Iraq. Iran's not Libya. They've been preparing for this exact scenario for 40 years. And if the US tries a ground invasion like they're threatening, it's going to be a bloodbath. And American voters are going to ask the same question they asked after Iraq. Why are we doing this? Who benefits? And the answer is going to be Israel, not the American people, not working-class Americans who can't afford groceries, the Israeli regime. And when that realization hits, the political fallout in the US is going to be catastrophic for the Israel lobby. Marandi won this hands down. He laid out the facts, he explained Iran's position clearly, and he exposed the contradictions in Trump's entire approach. This is what actual foreign policy analysis looks like when it's not filtered through corporate media propaganda. Drop a comment. Do you think the US is actually going to try a ground invasion, or is this all just posturing to manipulate oil markets? And if they do invade, how long before the American public turns on this war? If you want more breakdowns like this where we actually follow the money and call out the grift, hit that subscribe button. That's what we do here at MB. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.